very tough, isn't it, in situations like that? You know, I ask silly questions like that. Ass had to do the same thing. He'll go up and get asked exactly the same thing about his future. It's all very raw. How do you see it?
Well, if you're having to consider all options, that probably tells me that the option is to just let it go, to be honest. It can be the most difficult thing to do. I thoroughly like Jos Buttler as a human being. He's a very likeable young man. He's popular in that dressing room. He's popular with everyone that has played the game with him, but that's not his job to be popular. His job is to make England white ball cricket better. And if he's saying there's a lot of talent in that dressing room and their win percentage has fallen off a cliff and they've lost and gone out of the group stages in the 50-over World Cup, and they've gone out of the group stages in the Champions Trophy, and they've lost their last 4 bilateral series, and his form has diminished. He himself said, I'm a world-class player, I'm not batting. I don't think it sits comfortably on his shoulders. I've never looked at Jos Buttler and thought, oh wow, what a leader. He doesn't have that presence in the field that an Owen Morgan had, for an example. That's a bad comparison because you're talking about England's greatest ever white ball captain, and he was a very hard act to follow. But I don't think, as far as the captaincy goes, Jos Buttler has added that much to this England cricket team, but it's taken away from his batting. And when you add the two together, if you're taking so much away from a great player and you're not gaining on the other side with leadership and captaincy, and you're considering all options, I think it is probably time to move on.
It wasn't that long ago that he won the World T20. Matthew Mott was coach in Australia, and it all got off to a fantastic start. But since that point, have you seen him stamp his authority? Do you look, we watched Owen Morgan's side, it was his side. Did you get the same feeling when you looked out the window and watched England under Jos Buttler?
Not really, because he's not that type of person. And as a player, you can have that fire burning within and not be, everyone doesn't have to be like a Virat Kohli, you know, heart on your sleeve, in your face sort of. He's not that sort of bloke anyway. And you can have captains, MS Dhoni was one, where he didn't impose himself on the opposition, but he had a huge aura about him. When I look down, when they lost the plot today, when injuries were happening, there were misfields, things were happening, and I looked down, and Jos sometimes wears those moments heavily. And that's why Brendan McCullum, when he came in, said, I want to see Buttler smile more, because he would have seen from a distance a leader and a captain that the situation of the game is affecting his body language. The one thing about Morgan is, however England were playing, however England were doing, good or bad, it was often good, but that poker face of his was steely. You never really could see through him, and he had that body language and that aura about him. I just don't think Jos has that, and I think the most important thing is he needs to get back to batting the way that we know he can. He is not doing that. I think the captaincy, as we know, can eventually affect your batting, and it is affecting his.
What did you take from what Jos said to you when you asked him about his leadership? He said similar to myself and Ath, got to look at the options. It didn't sound like a man that was ready to take this forward still.
No, I think his time is done, actually, as captain. And I think that's probably right. You know, England do judge themselves on these ICC events. They've made that very clear, that because they come along so frequently now, the bilateral series are not, when I say not important, that's not what I mean. That's almost a Ben Duckett line. But they build towards these tournaments. But England have had 3 bad ones in a row now. The disastrous 50-over World Cup in India, a poor T20 World Cup in the Caribbean, where they made the semis but they didn't beat anybody of note through it, and now here. And their cricket is way below the standards to which they set themselves. And sometimes I think you just have to say, well, it's not working, therefore, you know, it's time for a change and time for somebody else. And I think deep down he probably knows that. I mean, we're all kind of amateur psychologists. When you look at somebody, how's he feeling, what's he thinking? But I get the sense of that. I couldn't exactly hear what Nas was saying there, but I heard the word burdened, and he looks like quite careworn. He looks like the weight of the captaincy is on him. And he, you know, it's a different time, and under slightly less weight, he'd have taken England to victory tonight, along with Joe Root. And the batting is just not quite there. It's not quite clicked for him. And what England are losing from his batting, they're not gaining from his leadership. So I think if that's the trade-off, I'd prefer to see a brilliant Jos Buttler batting for England.
It wasn't that long ago that England managed to put pretty much a second 11 out to beat Pakistan during COVID. You wrote about this fairly recently. So the depth of English white ball cricket seemed quite extraordinary, really. So have England, I know people have retired, i.e. Owen Morgan being the prime example, but have England regressed or have others caught up?
I think England have definitely regressed, and I think it's amazing, and it's a lesson in sport that the moment you slightly take your eye off the ball, it can come back to bite you, and then it's very difficult to drag it back. And there are all kinds of reasons for that, and we've talked about them plenty enough. You know, there was a time when the white ball team had done really well, winning the World Cup. The Test match team was in the doldrums, so focus goes back to trying to get the Test match team to where it is, and it's quite difficult to do that across formats. So all kinds of reasons where they've not quite focused on 50-over cricket. There were 2 T20 World Cups that came in quick succession, and suddenly you're not quite winning games, you're losing games, and then you find that your team is way off the pace. It hasn't looked a team that's in full working order here. You know, when you look at that Afghanistan bowling attack, the left armers, the pace off, lots of different types of spin, we've looked a little bit one-dimensional with the ball, and not enough batters are in prime touch. We saw a brilliant innings from Duckett against Australia, a brilliant one from Root today, but there's a lot of batters not quite clicking. Salt, Brook more recently, and that's hurt England.
When you look down that list of England players, you look at some of the most sought-after white ball cricketers in the world in terms of the franchise circuit, or is it T20 franchise circuit that we're looking at there?
T20, there is a difference between T20 cricket and 50-over cricket, and you can see it in some of those personnel, and I'm pleased for Duckett because he has adapted, and maybe that's because he's played a little bit more 50-over cricket because he's been in domestic cricket. But you look at someone like Phil Salt, I think he plays the same innings every time. He plays it as if it's a T20. I never look at Salt and he's gone 20 off 8 or 10 and go, wow, here we go, like I used to with Buttler. I go, wow, this could end any moment, and it often does. I look at Liam Livingstone, he stands at the top of the bounce and punches his first ball back with a point of 4, and I don't go, wow, he's going to win us this game. I think in a moment he's going to flash at one and try and hit it too hard and get out, because in T20 cricket, the value of a wicket is not so much. It's not so consequential. So you've got licence. You're not under pressure. The great thing about 50-over cricket, you are under pressure. This game showed you that. 30 for 3, Afghanistan were, and they're able, by smart cricket, to soak it up for a while and then go again. They're able, the ebb and flow, to work that out. I sometimes see this England side, and they don't do the right thing at the right time, the right option. So it's a combination of what Az says, not enough batters in nick, but also when they get the moment to seize the game. With Joe Root at the other end, the greatest, one of the greatest England batters ever, stay with him, take the game deep. Look what happened the other day with Inglis and Carey. Take the game deep and set it up later for Maxwell and come and do a cameo. England very rarely take the game deep. Even in India I was watching and I thought, no Bumrah, not playing, and you're swinging from your backside at 30 overs. Take it to the 40th, 45th, and see if they miss Bumrah. They're talented, as Buttler says. They're not smart. I thought Afghanistan today was smart. I thought they were given a lesson in losing early wickets, but putting on a par score.
Brendan McCullum's just come in as the white ball coach to go with his test duty. So if Jos is going to decide that perhaps he needs to move on, you haven't had much time to think about this, but who's he going to work with?
Well, and yeah, just thinking about it, there isn't that much choice. I mean, Harry Brook did it quite well, I thought, in the Australia series, the 50-over series that ended the summer. And it's hard to think beyond him. I'd have to get my thinking cap on to think of a few more names. But I thought he did it pretty well. But he's very young and he's very inexperienced in ODI cricket. But maybe it's a chance to try and build something with a new coach like McCullum. I think he's got his hands full, Brendan. I'm not entirely sure that I would have gone and united the roles, because there's always something that will go badly. There's always one format that you're not going to be absolutely knocking trees down. And therefore, you know, reputationally now, he was on a good thing with the Test match team. Reputation very high. People thinking he's got a bit of, you know, magic dust that's to sprinkle around. If things go badly here, you'll just lose a little bit of that. And of course, the scheduling makes it very tough. So I think he's got a real challenge on his hand. Obviously, I hope it works out.
At the start of the day, we were talking about whether this fixture should go ahead in Afghanistan cricket, but some of the joy that evenings like tonight, especially tonight when they beat England, can bring to the people back home. They would have enjoyed that back home. It perhaps would have brought a little smile to a few people's faces. And in Ibrahim Zadran, that's one of the great one-day knocks, isn't it? Because they were going nowhere after 10 overs.
You thought at 30 for 3, brilliant England, you've got a pitch that you can blast away and bowl short and bowl quick, and you've got them exactly where you want. This lad soaked it up for a little while. And I've very rarely seen someone who can have so much touch and class and hit through the line, but also have the power when he needs to go to those power shots. Yes, it's a good pitch, but 170 odd on it when you were 30 for 3 and just belting it to all parts. You don't look at him and go, well, he's an offside player, or he's a good player of spin, or he's a good player of pace bowling. He's just a very, very good player. And the progress of people like him sort of epitomises the progress of Afghanistan. And I look at sides like Pakistan, I look at sides, I did Bangladesh game a couple of days ago, and I think they should be looking at Afghanistan and saying, why have we stagnated as much as we have? Bangladesh is simply playing the same cricket that they were 15 years ago. And yet in those 15 years, this Afghanistan side have gone to a side that can compete with anyone.
From Division 5.
From Division 5 to competing with anyone in white ball cricket. That is progress.
We should mention Joe Root. That was high class. I mean, Ben Duckett was on the wrong end of the result despite his 160-some. Root again today.
Brilliant innings. What a player. I mean, he never ceases to amaze. We use all the superlatives all the time about Root, but time and time again he does it. His consistency is staggering. His skill against spin in particular, which is obviously why England wanted him for in that middle position. I'd still bat him at 3. I still think he can be England's number 3, and then you slot Jamie Smith in further down, because I think that was a very tough learning curve for Smith. But Root was immense today, in a pretty average England performance. There are not too many cricketers up there now in the dressing room be looking back and thinking had a good day today, but he was absolutely immense, and he just couldn't quite get England home. Tired and cramped and undone by a very good cricketer.
Well, it was a special innings from Joe Root, but it's been a special performance this evening here in Lahore from Afghanistan. England are out. Afghanistan can still go through. Enjoy the rain in Rawalpindi tomorrow, gentlemen, for that
early start, long road trip
tomorrow. Thank you very much indeed. Okay.